How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 1 of What If Deku Had a Time Quirk. And now, let's begin. Congratulations, Mrs. Midoriya. You are now the proud mother of a healthy young boy. The doctor would hand Inko her baby, as she would then smile down at it, knowing that the next couple of years of her life were only going to go up from there. So we then cut 4 years into the future, as we see a young Izuku running around excitedly, flying around his All Might action figure, just leaping in the air and excitedly yelling, "I can't wait to become the #1 hero!" As he would then start mumbling and talking about how he's going to become the greatest hero of all time, as Inko would then just smile down at the beaming ball of sunshine that was in front of her. "Izuku, that's great and all, but can you please go put your shoes on? Once you do that, we can leave to go see what your quirk is at the quirk doctor's office." As Izuku his eyes and head would bolt right towards Inko, having heard what she said, before rushing off to where his shoes were located, slipping them on over his feet, before excitedly jumping over to his mom, just saying, "Mom, can we go? Can we go?" As Inko would smile down at her child before saying, "Yeah, alright, Izuku, I guess we can go now." Grabbing her car keys, she would head down to where her car was, getting into it before they would then drive off to where the quirk doctor's office was. Walking into the waiting room, they would then be seated, being told that they now have to wait until they are called in, where the doctor will then take a couple of tests. After a couple minutes, Izuku's name would be called, where him and his mother would walk into a room, so the doctor would take a couple of tests before walking out. A good 30 minutes would end up passing, as Izuku would be still excitedly jittering up and down in his seat, not being able to hold his excitement to hear what his quirk was. The doctor would come in looking seriously down at some paperwork before staring right at Inko and Izuku. Inko would get chills, thinking that Izuku possibly could be quirkless by the look of the doctor. Before all of a sudden, the doctor's mood would completely shift and change, as he would then look down towards Izuku. "Congratulations, Izuku. It appears that you have a very powerful quirk. It involves the control of time, and that's what the doctors have come up with their name for it. It's actually a quirk we've never been able to see before. I think it's one of the rarest we've ever seen, actually. I've never actually encountered someone with a time quirk, so I would tell you you're extremely lucky." As Izuku would continue on jumping up and down before jumping up in the air. "Yeah! I can't wait to become the #1 hero! I'm gonna be even better than All Might!" As the doctor and Inko would just smile down at Izuku, as Inko would then ask some further questions about how Izuku's quirk works. The doctor would just start to explain. While Izuku can pause time and restart it after he pauses it, and he can also fast forward time and rewind it. His quirk is very, very dangerous. I suggest you actually contact your local pro hero and they could possibly train him to use his quirk a lot better. Inko would nod her head as him or her and Izuku would then go off to their car, sitting down in their car, as Inko would then ring up her husband, Izuku's father, explaining to him how Izuku had a very powerful quirk and that they're going to need to contact some heroes so that Izuku can control it. As Izuku's father was an extremely powerful businessman, however, he had to work on the other side of the globe, so they really couldn't see him too much. So, as he would then explain to them what they should possibly do, he would then give them a number that he was able to find through his extensive lists of contacts. Inko would call the number up, as it would then ring, and after a couple of minutes, cars would end up rolling in as people would barge in it to Inko and Izuku's home after they had arrived there, where they would then start looking at Izuku, asking him if he's had any experiences with his quirk yet. However, he had none just yet. He hadn't awakened it just yet. They told him that he can't go to school until he awakens his quirk, and that he's going to have to train with them for at least a year before he can go back to his public school life, as they don't want him to have just some sort of outburst if something doesn't go his way. That's not what Izuku would do, as he's been raised right. He's not some spoiled brat that would go having temper tantrum if he happened to not like something. So as Izuku would have all these people just testing him and training him, Finally, his quirk would awaken, causing Izuku to rewind a tree back into its first stages as a sapling. The people around him would look on in awe as the tree would be seen aging backwards, slowly regressing in size before it was then a sapling. Izuku's hands were glowing as he was touching the tree, as everyone would look on in complete shock. Before Izuku would take his hand off, his hands would then stop glowing, as Izuku would look down at his hands in pure excitement. From then on, a year would end up passing with Izuku being trained, as his quirk would easily just completely surpass some people that were even heroes at that point, as these people were very powerful trainers and they have trained many people before, as they were actually one of the groups involved in training the hero Hawks. So as Izuku would place it down his hand, he would then be seen transforming a tree back with ease, much like what he had done when he had awakened his quirk. So as Izuku would continue on practicing this, rewinding the tree or then fast-forwarding it until it's back to the same stage it was at. Izuku would also practice pausing time, grabbing something from across the room, and then restarting time back in the same position. He would continue on doing this until he had an absolute control of his quirk. They didn't want Izuku to do something crazy and possibly disrupt the entire flow of time, because that's just how powerful Izuku's quirk really is. So, as Izuku would then be transitioned back into public school, many of his friends, prior to his quirk just generating, they would ask him where he had been, where he would then tell them how he had actually been training with his quirk, as it's kind of dangerous, but it's really cool though. Many of them would beg Izuku to tell them what his quirk was, but he was forbidden to tell them, knowing as the people who had basically just trained him told him that if he were to tell someone what his quirk was, his family would be at risk of endangerment, as his quirk was very powerful and the hands of very scary villainous people would want to take it from him. Izuku would be confused what they mean by take his quirk. One cannot simply just take my quirk, that doesn't make sense, Izuku would say. However, they would just disregard Izuku, telling him that there's someone with a quirk out there that could possibly take his quirk, and that he needs to be careful around someone like that. As Izuku would nod his head before just telling all of his classmates that his mother told him to keep it a secret. Many of the people would begin to see Izuku as lying to them, but they wouldn't care. Izuku was a happy person for all and was just seen as one of the best friends to have. And with the promise of Izuku telling them his quirk one day when he becomes the #1 pro hero, many of them just knew Izuku had the confidence. Remember, they're still quite young. So as the years would end up passing, people would continue on seeing Izuku and how he would end up growing and growing in strength. Many people thought Bakugo was strong with his flashy explosion quirk, but seeing how Izuku just looked like a god compared to Bakugo, he didn't even have to use his quirk. He just continued on training with the people helping him, knowing that Izuku had the power to completely destroy the villainous world, or the villain underworld that was there, saving thousands of millions of lives. So these people knew they had to train Izuku right, and they would spend almost every hour training him with little to no pay from the Midoriya family, knowing that they probably didn't have the money to expend on all these resources they're using to train on Izuku. So with the funding of other heroes hearing about this just prodigy Izuku, they would also help it, mainly with All Might and his hero agency, wanting to see what this kid could possibly do. So with all of this backing and all of this, Izuku would end up being recommended to UA, as word would end up spreading about how Izuku wasn't even going to be taking the normal entrance exams, he was taking the recommended exams, and people still had no clue what his quirk even was. They were just shocked. They've never heard about what Izuku's quirk was, but yet he's taking the recommended exam. Even Bakugo has an insanely powerful quirk, but he's not in the recommended exam. What type of quirk does Izuku possibly have? Many theories would pop up over the years saying that he has some sort of power 100 times stronger than All Might's or something, but many of them just couldn't grasp a hold of the real truth about Izuku's quirk. So as 10 months would end up passing from Izuku's final day in school, he would end up walking onto the UA campus to see it was almost completely bare, only seeing 1 to 2 more people, as they would then be seated in a massive auditorium that was completely empty. The regular exams had been held a couple days prior, and now it was time for the recommended exams. Hello, UA students. Well, not UA students yet. It really doesn't matter. You're all basically going to make it into UA. This is basically just putting you at which class you should be in. And I know since you've been recommended, you're going to make one of the hero courses. So, depending on how you perform, you'll be put into Class 1A or Class 1B. Just know you're the future generation of heroes, and this shouldn't be taken lightly. So anyway, we've already tested your written capabilities and looked at your extensive test background through your years of school. So now we're going to test your hero capabilities, your quirk capabilities. So, let's do that. As they would then be told all about how the entrance exam was going to be. How there was different sorts of robots, a 1-pointer, 2-pointer, 3-pointer, and a 0-pointer that is best just to be avoided as it is the toughest robot to defeat. As they would all be told about this, the couple 10 of them possibly, would be shoved into a hallway or corridor where the doors would end up opening. Many of them would rush out, including Izuku. However, Izuku would then stop time, as he would then rush around the city before looking around to see where the biggest horde of robots possibly could be. With all of Izuku's training, he learned how to focus his rewind, fast forward, or pausing time on a certain amount of objects. So Izuku would see a horde of robots that he deemed the biggest, as it was a horde of 3-pointers and 2-pointers. He would then just cause time to continue moving again, where he would then summon his glowing power, as his hands would start to glow a bright yellow, where the crowd of robots would all of a sudden stop moving, as Izuku had stopped their time, where they would then start fast-forwarding, as the metal would then be seen corroding and rusting away, before it would then turn to dust. Nezu and some of the other teachers there would see Izuku, how he had all of a sudden just teleported into another area, and it had all of a sudden the robots were just deteriorating into fine dust. They had heard about this mysterious child, as Nezu, after seeing one instance of Izuku's quirk, knew right away that that kid was destined to become a great hero. He didn't even have the strength. Izuku had immense strength, but he didn't even need it. He could use his quirk from afar, from a close distance. His quirk was one of the most well-rounded quirks he had ever seen. He would also start thinking what Izuku's flaw in his quirk could be. There's always a fatal flaw in each quirk that could possibly end up killing a hero, and that's one of the things the teachers are there to find out, knowing that if they don't find it out, their students could possibly be killed in a training exercise even, as they needed to end up realizing what their weakness could possibly be. Izuku would continue on his strategy of pausing time, looking for a horde of robots, before then making time start up again, as he would then stop the time for the horde of robots, fast-forwarding them or rewinding them until a stage of where he would just deem them destroyed, as he would end up getting the points from that. However, all of a sudden, the ground would end up starting to shake, as Izuku would look up to see 3 0-pointers staring down at Izuku. Nezu had decided to make something interesting before slamming a red button, releasing the 0-pointer army. Sure, it wasn't like a mass horde of these smaller robots, but it was quite a lot. These 0-pointers are massive, towering over Izuku and the city beneath them like huge skyscrapers. So, as Izuku would look up to it, all of a sudden he would end up hearing a cry for help, as he would look down the street to see someone caught in some of the rubble from a falling building, as they were yelling for help, as they were in the direct path of a stomping robot foot. As Izuku would see the foot closing in, he would stop time before rushing in to where the person was. He'd stopped time too much, as he can only stop time for a limited amount of time, one of his weaknesses, but he can build up that endurance over a period of training and time. So, say Izuku could only stop time for 3 seconds when he first got his quirk. However, if he trained for over tens of years, he could end up stopping time for possibly over an hour at a time. But stopping time in small increments can extend that period of just time. I've said time so much in this video already. So as Izuku stops time, he would then rush over to the girl, pulling her out of the rubble, as he would then pick her up, rushing off out of the reach and distance of the 0-pointers. As Izuku would then get into behind in just a building, hiding away from all of the other robots as they were still prowling around the streets looking for other heroes or heroes in training to attack, Izuku would start up time once again before muttering under his breath that time has begun moving once more. All of a sudden, the girl would look around to see that she was not in the pile of rubble once more, as all of a sudden she could start moving her arms and legs once again. She would look on to her savior before seeing Izuku standing up. She would then put out her hand. My name's Momo Yaoyorozu. Thank you for saving me. I don't know how you did it since I didn't even see anything. Do you mind explaining to me what happened? As Izuku would then sort of laugh. Well, with the introductions, my name's Izuku Midoriya, and I was able to get to you fast enough so that I could bring you back here out of the reach of the 0-pointer. Izuku still didn't want to tell anyone, even people being his maybe classmates in the future, what his quirk could possibly be. Momo would then nod her head, seeing as Izuku was being purposely vague with his description of what had happened. As Izuku would then hear over the intercom that there was only 10 minutes left to the test and that they better start racking up some more points before they have to shut down. Izuku would then ask her if she thinks she made it or not, where Momo would then start to question herself. I don't really know. I thought I destroyed some robots, but I'm not quite sure. Izuku then put a hand on her shoulder before looking at her. Well, if you gotta be confident more. If you've destroyed a bunch of robots, then you should be confident that you've made it. Like, I know 100% that I'm probably gonna make one of the top classes. I've already destroyed tons of robots. So if you think you've done the same, you should be confident that you're gonna make it. That's one of the other traits of being a hero. You gotta be confident in your abilities. Because if a villain sees through that you're not gonna be confident, he could use that to his advantage. As Momo would nod her head from the short, just teaching lesson that Izuku had done about being a hero, he would then rush off to destroy more robots, where Momo would then do the same. As the test would end up passing, Izuku would walk home, as he would then sit down on the couch, where his mother would then hand him a glass of water before asking him how he did. I think I did great. Thanks for asking. I actually hope I get to the top class. I think it's going to be quite fun. As his mother would nod his head before she would then ask when a letter in the mail or an email was supposed to be given out. Izuku would think before saying, I'm not quite sure actually. Guess it's now just a long wait. As Izuku would then go outside to continue on some training regimens that he had not finished from that morning. A couple weeks would end up passing as Inka would rush into Izuku's room, bursting in before showing Izuku a letter addressed to him, as she would slam it down on Izuku's desk as there was a bright embedded UA symbol in gold written right on the envelope. Do you think it's your acceptance letter? Izuku would try to calm his mom down. Wow, how do we even know that I got accepted? We should just slow things down a bit, Mom. As Izuku would open up the letter before a small disc would end up popping out. Hello, Izuku Midoriya, and possibly other family members of Izuku. I would just like to congratulate you as you actually got the first out of all examinees, not only in the recommended test, but also in the normal student test. Congratulations, Izuku. I'd also like to welcome you to the first year Class 1A, as your teacher this year will be someone by the name of Shota Aizawa. If you haven't heard of name, he's probably a hero known as Eraserhead, another hero that likes to hide in the shadows. So he might not be known to many of you. As Nezu would then say, "Congratulations, Izuku," before the disc would then shut off, as a message would then play, self-destructing in 5 seconds. 5, 4, Izuku would just look at the device as it would then explode, creating a small, just burnt mark on Izuku's desk. That's kind of cool. Izuku would touch it before his mother would then congratulate her son before walking out of the room. The next day would end up passing as a package would end up arriving on their front door. Izuku would look at it as he would then open it since it was addressed to him, where he would see his UA uniform. Deciding to put it on, he would look on in amazement, seeing that it fit him perfectly. He had no clue how done it, as he never put his size of uniform or shirt anywhere, as he was just kind of confused on how they were possibly able to do it. As his solution was, well, it's UA after all. Of course they're going to be doing stuff like that, being able to find what my shirt size is without even me telling them. As the next day would end up passing, Izuku would walk in to the school, as he would end up sitting down, where the same black-haired girl would end up walking up to him. "Oh, hey Izuku, it's me, Momo. I'm not sure if you forgot about me or not. I see you've made it into Class 1A. Congratulations. I was really hoping I'd make it into your class too." Izuku would look on before saying, "Oh yeah, congratulations to you too. See, you've made it in since you're in this classroom after all." She would decide to sit next to Izuku, as Aizawa would then walk in, before he would look on towards the rest of his class, or the class he would have to deal with for the next couple of years. "Good morning, UA students. I'd just like to start things off that the place that you're all in now can be replaced. So don't think just because you've made it into Class 1A once doesn't mean you can be kicked out of it. I can sure as heck expel you from this damn school, so don't think you're just the best of the best here, you're the most important. You gotta remember, there's always someone trying to take your spot. You're in the top class, and so the Class 1A people or the Class 1B people are looking on to try to take that spot away from you." As Aizawa would be saying this, he would then hand out PE uniforms, as he would then tell them, "Go down, find where the locker rooms are, put your PE uniforms on, and head out to the testing site known as E." I'm skipping just the introduction, just meeting up with all the other classes and Nezu's speech and all of that. You're the top hero just class in this school for the first years, so there's no time for having to deal with all of that crap. We need to start training as soon as possible. You're the next generation of heroes, after all. All the time we wait is another life lost, so let's begin. You all have 20 minutes to make it down there. You better start going or else I'll expel you." As all of them would stand up from their seats, rushing off, as Izuku would do the same, as he would look down to his watch before starting a 20-minute timer. As Izuku would walk off to the locker rooms, Momo would end up asking him why he wasn't running, which Izuku would just say he knows he's gonna make it. It's gonna be quite easy. As Izuku would then stop time, where he would then go down to the locker room, put on his PE uniform, and would then find testing site E. As he would then sit down under the lone tree in the dirt patch and field, he would end up waiting for Aizawa to arrive along with the rest of his class. As he would mutter under his breath that time has begun moving once again, he would look around to see that Aizawa was nowhere even near and possibly not even left the UA main building. So as Izuku would sit there waiting, Aizawa would finally stroll in with about 10 minutes left to spare, as finally some of his classmates would also arrive, following Aizawa as well. "Well, it appears someone actually got here before us. That's quite impressive. Wait, I didn't even see you in the locker rooms. I just assumed you were late or something. How'd you make it down here so fast? Izuku would then shrug, saying that it's a secret, as they would then begin the test that Aizawa had done. As Aizawa would toss a ball to Izuku and would ask him to throw it, as Izuku would step inside the circle before winding back his arm, throwing the ball as far as he possibly could. However, before the ball could even get in arm's reach just in front of Izuku, Izuku would stop the time on the ball before hitting the ball as hard as he possibly could with his hand, just slamming his fist into the ball at least a couple of times, as Izuku would then stop the time stop on the ball, as the forward momentum hitting the ball would then cause the ball to be sent flying, rushing off, as the ball would only go around 500 meters. Many of the class would look on in shock at what Izuku had done. Many of them would just excitedly shout that this is going to be a fun year, being able to use their quirks. They've never been able to do it in something like this, after all. Aizawa would only just be confused. Oh, you think you're going to have fun? I'll bet you're going to eat your words after some of the things you're going to have to do for training this school year. Sawa would say ruthlessly towards his students before they would continue on with the tests, as Izuku could perform well in some of them while performing not so well in others. His quirk wasn't the most, best quirk for some of these tests. Sure, he could stop time, rewind, and fast forward it, but it's not like he's going to be the absolute all might with strength for a grip test or something. So with Izuku just doing some of the tests while not just being first in others, Izuku would get around 7th place, finishing in the middle of the pack. However, many of the students would look on towards the person in first, being Momo Yaoyorozu. With her quirk being able to create anything, she was able to use devices that she had learned about prior to the events to help her just to easily be able to beat many of the tests that Aizawa had assigned. As all of the students would end up walking off back to the classroom, they would end up sitting down where Aizawa would then tell them they are now free to go for the rest of the day, and please don't do anything stupid. The next couple of weeks they're going to only have some orientation and no form of training. Their hero class is scheduled a month from today, so I suggest you preparing, as if you're out of shape for that, I'll consider moving you down to even one of the general courses, Aizawa would say before walking out of his classroom. All of the students would nod their head at what Aizawa had said before rushing off back to their homes to continue on with their daily life. Now a month would end up passing as they would all walk into school, having marked it down on their calendars that today was their first hero class. They couldn't wait, as All Might would then be seen rushing down the hall. However, many of the students wouldn't know who this was rushing down the hallway, only hearing stomping from inside the classroom. As many of the students would look on towards the door, they would all of a sudden see it slam open, bursting in two, as it was a sliding door, as the door would slam, breaking some of the wall that it was partially in, having Aizawa left it cracked, as All Might would stand there with his hands on his sides, exclaiming, "I am here, as your new hero teacher!" As All Might would then walk over to the middle of the classroom near the front side before just laughing. "Ha, I bet you didn't expect that entrance, did you? Well, anyways, many of you know that I'm All Might. I'd be actually kind of surprised if you didn't know who I was. So, anyone have any questions to ask me? I'm assuming this is one of your first times seeing the number one hero after all." Many of Izuku's classmates would raise his hand, as Momo would end up raising her hand before pointing at the door and wall. "Do you know why you did that? You damaged our classroom." As All Might would then look behind him to see the door shattered in two, along with some of the wall and drywall coming apart. As All Might would then just say, "Sorry about that." Scratching his head, he would then begin with what the lesson was today. "So, class, today we're going to be doing some small-scale exercises leading up to a bigger event. right before a field trip. You'll know more about it when it's coming up. So anyway, we're going to be doing some major training. So, all of you are going to be writing down some of the abilities that your quirk can do, and we'll be having one of our specialists come in to give you a certain exercise to be training your quirk. You better be training at your absolute hardest. So we're going to be looking for who should be just the star of this class. Well, all of you are stars of this class. It doesn't really matter. There's really no number one. The main thing in hero is just being a hero in general is teamwork. So we're going to be working on training up your quirks, making them stronger, and your overall teamwork abilities. As the major event we're going to be doing before your field trip is going to be a teamwork exercise. And that is where I'm going to leave this What If off, everyone. I hope you all did enjoy part 1 of What If Deku had a time control quirk. Part 2 is coming out tomorrow. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.